This is Rummy's Corner.
When I go to big cities, everybody stop, and it's like, wow, Mike Tyson. You're Mike Tyson, aren't you? Aren't you that young knockout kid? And it's like, wow.
Iron Mike Tyson is arguably the most exciting and captivating boxer of all time, and that's saying something. Iron Mike made his professional debut all the way back in March 1985, and he quite literally took the heavyweight division by storm. Tyson was fast, explosive, and powerful, and he was incredibly skilled with a great abundance of raw talent. Tyson was an absolute powerhouse. His bobbing and weaving style was mighty effective, and his ferocious knockouts were generating a lot of buzz where he was viewed as a must-watch up-and-coming prospect. By the end of 1985, in a span of just 9 months since making his pro debut, he was a perfect 15-0 with all 15 wins coming by way of knockout. Tyson won another 13 fights in 1986. The last of which happened in November, when he became the youngest heavyweight boxer in history to win a major world title at just 20 years old. The following year, he would collect the rest of the major belts of his day one by one, and he continued defending his undisputed championship. Tyson beat a slew of top heavyweights from his day, but it wasn't just about Tyson winning against all these top guys. It was the way he was doing it that shocked and awed the boxing world at large. Iron Mike ultimately solidified his claim as the one and only true undisputed world heavyweight champion in June 1988 when he stopped lineal champion Michael Spinks in the opening round. Mike Tyson was the undefeated, undisputed heavyweight king. He was indeed the baddest man on the planet. Tyson continued defending the undisputed crown the following year, where many observers believed he would perhaps go on to become the greatest heavyweight during the long, rich history of boxing. But Tyson's reign came to an abrupt and sudden end when he was stopped in Tokyo by Buster Douglas in the biggest boxing upset of all time. It was a shocking and unexpected turn of events, and the iconic image of a battered and confused Iron Mike arduously replacing his mouthpiece was nothing short of surreal. Tyson rebounded from the loss with 4 wins in a row, including 2 first-round knockouts, followed by back-to-back victories against the highly regarded Razor Ruddock. By this point in time, many viewed the loss to Tokyo Douglas as nothing more than a fluke, with many believing that Iron Mike was still the baddest man on the planet. Tyson was scheduled to face the new undisputed world heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield in 1991, but that fight never came together as planned because Tyson was injured and then sent to prison. During his entire time out of boxing, which lasted more than 4 years, many still believed that Tyson was the uncrowned heavyweight champion who would reclaim his crown and resume his dominance over the division upon his return. When Tyson finally came back, despite winning both the WBC and WBA belts, he was never close to being the same boxer. Tyson still carried that ferocious power, and his reputation remained menacing, but he was far removed from being the highly skilled, well-oiled machine that he was under the guidance of Kevin Rooney during his peak form stretch. Tyson went on to lose back-to-back fights against Holyfield when the two finally did meet, and starting with the Holyfield rematch, Tyson became a more villainous figure. In addition to twice biting Holyfield's ear in their rematch, which resulted in a disqualification loss and a year-long suspension, he started employing more shady and dirty tactics, and his behavior in interviews was becoming far more erratic and unhinged. But Tyson still carried power and an ability to deliver, despite his declining skills and conditioning. What Tyson lacked in dedication during his second career, he made up for with his antics and unpredictable behavior. Indeed, Tyson playing up the role of a villain actually helped keep him in the headlines, which likewise kept people tuned in. In a very real way, his second career had a circus sideshow vibe.
There's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I want to eat his children.
Tyson eventually lost his long-awaited showdown against the great Lennox Lewis in 2002, and after that, his motivation took an even bigger nosedive as his skills and athleticism continued to deteriorate. His heart was clearly no longer in it, and this was made abundantly clear when he lost what wound up becoming the last two fights of his professional career against Danny Williams and Kevin McBride. The McBride bout was the last fight of Mike's professional career, and that happened in June 2005, nearly 20 damn years ago. But like a phoenix rising from the ashes, amazingly, Mike Tyson is scheduled to have an officially sanctioned professional bout coming up in less than 2 weeks on November 15th, in a bout that will be shown live on the streaming app service known as Netflix. 58-year-old Iron Mike is scheduled to have a showdown against 27-year-old Jake Paul. More amazingly still, the former villainous figure in heavyweight boxing is now being revered as a babyface hero, whereas Paul is the one widely viewed as the villainous heel. Indeed, it truly seems the entire world wants to see Mike Tyson destroy Jake Paul.
Mike Tyson, you're next, big boy. Sign the contract, November 15th on Netflix.
Jake Paul is a famous YouTuber and actor turned professional boxer. Paul has 11 professional fights, winning 10, with 7 of those wins coming inside the distance. Most of his fights have been against guys who are not professional boxers. Several of his opponents were MMA fighters and the sort, but he has fought a few real boxers. And to his credit, he has shown a little of boxing ability in the context of what he is doing, and he has likewise shown improvement along the way. 5 of the 11 guys Paul has faced were making their professional boxing debut, and 2 other opponents had a record of 0-1 going into the fight against Paul, including his most recent opponent back in July, Michael Perry, who was another MMA guy and also a bare-knuckle boxer. Paul won the fight by technical knockout in round 6. Ironically, that was the date that Paul was originally scheduled to face Iron Mike, but that fight was pushed back to November after Tyson suffered an ulcer flare-up on an airplane, and medical professionals advised him not to fight until after he recovered from the episode. The entire situation is mighty strange all around. On one hand, you have a former all-time great who is literally 35 years removed from his best fighting days. And on the other hand, you have a young man in his physical prime who has a little boxing experience, despite never competing at the elite level. The lone loss on Paul's record was against Tommy Fury, which suggests that Paul would struggle badly if he ever competed at an elite level, or even something remotely approaching the elite level. Now he's fighting a guy who was the elite of the elite 10 years before he was even born. That inherently adds to the perception that Paul is the bad guy, some young punk trying to make a name for himself by beating up an old man, a living legend ridiculously past his prime. Boxing fans generally tend to hate Jake Paul on the whole, viewing his fights as circus sideshow attractions that harm the sport on the whole. Beyond that, a lot of people simply don't like Jake Paul, period. To many, he comes across as nothing more than an obnoxious loudmouth with a gigantic ego. Paul has made a name for himself in boxing, and he has earned a great deal of money from professional boxing, which many boxing diehards view as a total farce, especially when considering the fact that many elite boxers never see the type of money and recognition that Paul has received. And in the eyes of many, now that young punk is acting like a shameless bully picking on an old man. For all of these reasons, many people would like to see Tyson destroy Paul, like an old Harry Callahan coming out of a placid retirement to bring punks to justice one last time.
You gotta ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
The last time Mike Tyson stepped into a ring in front of a live televised audience was in November 2020, when he had an exhibition bout against former 4-division world champion Roy Jones Jr. As part of the undercard for that event, Paul won his second professional bout when he knocked out Nate Robinson in round 2. As for Tyson, him and Jones, both boxers showed glimpses of their former greatness, but on the whole it felt like a friendly sparring session between two former legends. Despite the fact that Tyson versus Paul is reportedly going to be a professionally sanctioned bout, many observers believe that it will be nothing more than a friendly sparring session, like what we saw between Tyson and Jones 4 years ago. Like the Jones exhibition, the fight between Tyson and Paul is reportedly going to consist of 8 rounds, 2 minutes each instead of the usual 3 minutes each. The boxers will use 14-ounce gloves, where typically heavyweight boxers use 10-ounce gloves. Tyson was a career heavyweight who typically weighed in just under 220 during his peak fighting years. And as they say, power is the last thing to go. Every Paul opponent to date has officially weighed in under 200 pounds. So 14-ounce gloves would definitely favor the much younger boxer. As for the 2-minute rounds as opposed to 3, that is definitely something that would appear to favor Tyson on the surface. But Paul at times has looked a bit winded himself in the later parts of quite a few rounds. So this might be more of a push, or perhaps even an advantage for Paul in the grand scheme. I'm still not entirely sure that all of this is real, but for the purposes of this video, we are assuming it is real. So assuming both boxers enter the ring with real intentions of knocking the other out, despite his advanced age, Tyson could conceivably still have the ability to deliver a devastating power bomb if he uses his knowledge and experience to exploit an early opening against someone who is so inexperienced at the elite level. But again, Tyson is a 58-year-old man far removed from his best fighting days. Hell, the fight already needed to be postponed because Tyson had a damn ulcer flare-up. At his age, the body doesn't always respond to what the mind is trying to do. There is an increased chance of an unexpected injury to joints, muscles, and bones. Cardio becomes a major issue. And most importantly, the ability to absorb a punch is greatly diminished. Just look at what happened when 58-year-old Evander Holyfield got stopped in a round against Belfort. As a boxing fan, it was a sad sight to see a former legend getting beaten up like that. And nobody wants to see something like that, or worse, happen to Iron Mike Tyson. But the reality is, something like that, or worse, could happen. Nobody wants to see that, and Paul is clearly not without boxing skills. He can be light on his toes, he has decent movement, he has pretty fast hands, he can throw a decent punch, and puts his punches together fairly well. He also has money and resources that have enabled him to grow and evolve as a boxer, and to his credit, he has shown dedication to the craft in the context of what he is doing, while being more effective in the art of prize fighting than most all-time great boxers ever came close to in terms of earning power. If Mike Tyson is coming to win and win early, he may find it difficult to close the gap against a much younger man in the prime of his life. Tyson may have a difficult time absorbing the incoming fire, and Tyson may struggle with stamina the longer the fight goes. But early on, you have to give him a chance because of that power and experience. And if there is any hope for Tyson landing big early, I think it stems from the fact that Paul has a tendency to keep his hands low, and that Paul has never faced anyone with the boxing IQ possessed by Iron Mike. Tyson might be remembered for his unique blend of speed, power, and accuracy that produced so many sensational highlight reel knockouts. But that was all predicated on an immaculate understanding of the sweet science, where Tyson was a master of the craft, a true artist inside the squared circle. In that sense, if Tyson does have difficulty closing the gap, he may look to load up on a counter after lulling Jake into a false sense of security. The whole thing has a certain irony to it when you look at Mike Tyson's journey that led him here. He began his career as an exciting prospect, became the youngest heavyweight champion in history, unified all 3 titles of his day and the lineage one by one to become the baddest man on the planet. Then he had the hiatus where he was out of action for more than 4 years, and he essentially became the villain of boxing, and he ultimately burned out in his mid to late 30s where his heart was clearly no longer in it. Now Mike Tyson is viewed as a revered hero who many hope will humble Jake Paul, a man who plays up the role of villain as Tyson once did, albeit a different type of boxing villain, an invader who is intruding and making a mockery out of the sweet science, the beloved sport of boxing. A lot of older boxing fans who remember watching Prime Tyson fight are hoping he can turn back the clock one last time in epic fashion. A lot of younger fans who never saw Tyson fight live in a real match are looking forward to seeing the legend in action. A lot of casual fans are curious because of the spectacle of it all, with the circus-like sideshow attraction atmosphere surrounding the entire bizarre event, which is familiar territory for both Tyson and Paul. But one common theme is that Paul is the villain here, the young punk who needs humbling. And aside from die-hard Paul fans, who tend to be fans of his more from outside the scope of boxing, the entire boxing world, and the greater world at large, want to see Mike Tyson destroy Jake Paul. But at his age, could he actually do it? Can Iron Mike Tyson summon his inner Harry Callahan, where he comes out of a placid retirement to bring this young punk to justice? That remains to be seen. What do you think? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed and have a wonderful night. This is Rummy's Corner.
Hey, listen. Soon as I catch this guy, 'cause he's going to be running around, but as soon as I catch this guy, it's going to be totally over.